Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. It's especially happy in certain areas of the Bronx. And I'll discuss that in a minute, Russ, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead.
So, history was made yesterday. The Cleveland Indians had their last home game with the logo of the Indians. And so people were taking pictures of it and sort of saying, yeah, this is the end of an era and everything else. And it's see, now if this were my team, I don't know if I would be taking a picture of it like that anymore, because it's well, everybody decided to get rid of it because of what it represented. But now everybody's thinking that they're going to miss it, even though what it represents. It's a very confusing time in Cleveland. That's what I would say. Well,
okay. Are they going to miss the smiling Indian logo? Some people will. I mean, some people do. Some people don't like this change, Russ. I mean, and just because you like the name or the emblem doesn't make you racially insensitive.
No.
But I mean, yesterday the Buffalo Bills, Kevin, played the Washington football team, and I still hear announcers make the mistake and call them the Redskins.
Yeah. Old habits die.
Yeah, that's going to probably happen for a few years. And you know what? I actually like the name Washington football team.
Me too. Yeah. I just think it's.
But now they're thinking about changing that.
To me, it feels sort of like English soccer.
Yeah. Right.
No.
I like it too, but they're talking about changing it.
Yeah. Well,
why? Because they can't market it. That's
right.
Why.
Well, I mean, but it's different enough. You think you could market the uniqueness of it somehow,
right?
But I mean, those guys are pretty clever. I'm sure they could figure something out. But I wanted to bring up as well. I've talked about this before. Being 65 years old, and everyone talks about the futility of their particular sports teams. But one playoff win in my lifetime, and for the Lions, it's really
crazy.
Just nuts. It's just nuts. Yesterday, one of the things everybody talks about in Detroit is the Lions always find different ways to lose.
I mean, come on.
And then yesterday, we've had a new head coach this year in Campbell, and there seems to be, they're trying to change the culture. We've heard it all before. But this time it looked like maybe it was working, because game 3, the defense, which had been atrocious, had rose up, and the offense had come from behind, and they had a lead with less than a minute to go, and then all of a sudden the Baltimore Ravens started to come back. They had a 4th and 19, and the Lions called a timeout, and you could hear everybody in Detroit yelling, "No, don't do that," because they had them on the run, and the other team was struggling, and of course the Lions called the timeout. Well, the Ravens were out of timeouts, but they used that timeout to change the play, created a first down, but it still only took them, just inside the 50. So they had to line up for a field goal that would be 66, which would be an NFL record.
Yep.
Now, on that play, it's been shown over and over on all the replays that time has expired. There should have actually been a 5-yard delay of game, which would have moved the team back, and it would have been a 71-yard field goal, which would not have
attempted it.
They wouldn't have attempted it, because the 66 hit the crossbar and went over for the game-winning field goal. Now, what's interesting to me about that 5-yard penalty is they had the right people on it. I wish I knew his name, because he's a former referee, but he was on the post-game show, and Boomer Esiason was on there and was just complaining about that. It was clearly a penalty. And Cowell ended up talking about that there actually is always a delay between the time, because you can't actually see the ball at the same time.
Right.
So there's always like a 1-second delay, but they counted it, and it was beyond what would have been the normal delay that it takes for the referee to see that the ball's still sitting there and the clock has expired. So, they sort of build that in, like they expect that you really get 41 seconds, but this clear was 42. So anyway, here we are today. Yeah. Well, here we are today, and there's a new way for the Lions to lose. I mean, it was a remarkable kick.
Yes.
They were the victims also on Tom Dempsey's 63-yard.
I didn't realize they were against Dempsey.
Yeah. So that was So they've had some history of losing on dramatic kicks to be fair. But what a game that was.
Yeah, I think it might have been Gene Steratore. I think that's the guy who's the former referee. At least he's on one of Fox or CBS. So I know both employ former referees. But the funny thing was the Dempsey record, I believe, was broken by Jason Elam.
Yeah,
and everybody put an asterisk on that one because it was in Denver and it was in the thin air. You can't put an asterisk on this one. It was in a dome, but that's so what. So there was no wind, but 66 yards, and apparently,
and the kicker had also beaten the Lions before in dramatic fashion on a 61-yarder. So he had some history, doing in the Lions, which everybody has history doing in the
Lions. Now talk about disputed calls, and believe me, nothing gives me greater glee. And Russ knows how pissed off I was listening to and watching and following the Yankees game, because we were talking during the seventh inning when and I didn't know how bad it actually was, because DJ LeMahieu drops a pop-up in foul territory, and then Joey Gallo drops a pop-up that gave the Red Sox the lead.
Wow.
In the eighth inning, with Aaron Judge up, Joe West calls it was a swing and a miss, but he calls a foul tip. And the catcher had caught the ball, and he was taking the ball out of his glove, and it fell out, and he called that like if you catch it and it's a foul tip, it's out. He was just the exchange. It looked like he was throwing it back to the mound or throwing it back to the pitcher, and he dropped it and he called it, foul ball, but not play goes on, and it's a judgment call. It's not something that can be reviewed. And then the next pitch, Judge hits a two-run double off the wall, off of a former Yankee, Adam Ottavino, and then of course Stanton hits a home run to ice the game. So, I mean, a lot of these objective calls. I mean, they're
that's what umpiring is about, though, Mike. I mean, it is objective.
Well, Don Dinkinger.
Yeah, I mean, there's always you're going to have the human error in it unless you go to robotics, and I really don't think it people mention the fact that it works so well in tennis, but it's a wholly different game. And, it's not going to be it works in tennis because we have those kind of things once every, 100 hits, and here we have it almost every pitch. So, where we have some kind of dispute.
All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, September 27th, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, HockeyBuzz.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and they let me back into Canada. And this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We got a few things to talk about, and to my mind, a controversial top 75 of all time list put out by the Hockey News, but we'll talk about that in the second half.
I do have one good feel-good thing that just hit my email too. So
okay, go. You start with that.
Okay. So everybody knows when the NHL signed with Adidas that we all felt pretty good about what Adidas does as far as making their wares and sneakers and everything else. Pretty good quality stuff. But what I've noticed, I would say for the last 5 years, because I do buy some Adidas sneakers and other things, is that they started to have a line of sneakers that were made out of recycled materials, but it took a lot. Like originally, they were like $150 sneakers. So I get why everybody wasn't buying those. But now they've ported that over to their regular sneaker line, which is basically for their memory foam ones, which are fabulous, by the way. They're just comfortable as hell. And those are made 100% out of recycled bottles. Well, now NHL jerseys are going to be made out of 50% recycled materials, the ones that hit the ice this year. And that's great because, again, part of the issue is with plastic recycling is just because you send it out to recycle, it doesn't mean your city's actually recycling it. Some do, some don't. So the best thing you can do if that's not happening to reduce the waste is to turn it into something else. So whether it's, a bench, whether it's a play set, whether it's, you get the idea. So this is great. This is something where this is really a home run for Adidas and for the NHL, simply because it's good for the environment. And then the Rangers named a night for Henrik Lundqvist.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to bring that up.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as part of the Rangers stream of consciousness. But Kev, I wanted to start with this and not give it too much attention because it's an ugly incident. But I think, since the IIHF posted it and cited it, and we've seen the video of it, and in the age of social media, anything happening anywhere is going to get out. And I didn't even know there was a Ukrainian league, to be honest, but there is. And in the Ukrainian league, a player named Andrei Denishkin apparently was in some sort of confrontation with an American player named Jalen Schmrack, and he's African American. And Denishkin, after the play, pretended to peel a banana and eat it. And the IIHF came out and said, this is a direct assault on the ideals and values of our game, and we will ensure that all necessary ethics violation investigations occur to ensure that this behavior is sanctioned appropriately. Now, okay, there have been incidents in the NHL back when Wayne Simmons was in Philadelphia. He was playing a preseason game in London, Ontario, and somebody threw a banana on the ice. There was a situation with Ty Domi and Donald Brashear back in the day where there was an accusation of a racial epithet being used. So this is not unique to the Ukrainian league or to Europe.
But and also in Europe, I think we've had more instances of that. It's become a thing. I know I've heard of, at high levels of soccer where, fan bases would get on opposing players and they would do things of that nature. So where it was, wasn't just isolated. It was just fans.
Well, I'm not sure if it was the same game, but a player I follow, Eliezer Sherbatov, he was a really good prospect at one time coming out of Israel. Thought was many years ago maybe he would have a shot at the NHL. Hasn't, but he was talking about a player from that Ukraine league that he plays in and an anti-Semitic situation. So I kind of wonder if that was like now the same situation. And, that's, again, like Kevin said, to me, that's on the rise everywhere, but it definitely is worse in Europe. But it's on the rise everywhere.
Well, let's just say this. You can't get away with anything anymore. In this day and age with like games on video, if it's being recorded and you've got the arena mic picking up almost everything, you can't say anything, and this is a good thing. You can't say any kind of homophobic comment. You can't make a racial comment. You can't impugn somebody's masculinity. You can't do any of that. And honestly, and I will talk about this in a minute. I just watched the 5 episode series on the Leafs called All or Nothing, and anything that was said on the ice, if you want to, there were more F words said than the movie Scarface. So anything that's said on the ice is going to be recorded and and get out. And so I'm happy for that because it's just stupid to say this stuff. It really is.
Yeah, it's more than stupid. I mean, it's just, but again, you could tell everybody you're being filmed and everybody, whatever, but if you have that in you or there's hate in your heart, it doesn't matter that you're
right.
Like it's just gonna happen. And I think that's what ends up happening is these people, they don't care that gets out. Like it's just, that's what they're feeling. That's what they say. You can't blame it on their temper because I get mad at a lot of things and I don't say those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, for sure that it has become a problem. But you did bring up another issue, which I've found really fascinating. As I've grown older, television has become more and more liberal with regard to what they allow. When I watched my Detroit Tigers play baseball, every game now they apologize for their on field mic that picks up when a guy strikes out. He drops an F-bomb. It happens every game.
Yeah.
And you hear it, and I almost feel like they should just not even apologize because
no, they shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, here we go, and that's the way.
I think they have to because of the FCC.
Yeah,
the FCC has the problem.
If they don't apologize, then then they basically then they could be fined or something like that.
But just think how far we've come in terms of sex on television and all that kind of stuff. When Rob and Laura Petrie had to sleep in separate beds on the sitcom in the 60s, and now we have all kinds of sexual innuendo on television and swearing in on news shows. It was verboten that somebody would say pissed off on a news show. But I see many political analysts use that phrase as if that's totally acceptable now as well. So it's certainly a changing world to be sure. But under any circumstances, whether the world has changed or not, the level of racism that you guys just described in the video, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just absurd. And I hope they throw the book at them, beyond what we normally see in those things. I hope this is a lengthy suspension.
Yeah, so do I, and ironically, this was the first bit of news to come out of the IIHF since Renee Fassel has stepped down. Luc Tardif of France is the new IIHF head, and he's the one who released this statement. So
I think that's a good sign. I mean, I wasn't a big Renee Fassel fan. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, switching to your team. That you
hold on. You mentioned the all or nothing. I wanted to mention something.
Well, no, I'm going to bring that.
You're still going to do it. Okay.
Oh yeah. I'm bringing it up in a minute. I wanted to get to the Rangers here because I know that there was one thing that you brought up in a previous conversation that you were not too pleased about, but also it just the Rangers, we know from the moves that they made during the offseason are clearly focused on being more physical. Bringing in Ryan Reeves, bringing in Sammy Blais from St. Louis, signing Barclay Goodrow. Goodrow in a preseason game against the Islanders got a little frisky and got a 5 in a game for, I think it was a high hit.
Hit from behind.
You told me about Ryan Reeves apparently trying to show Kravtsov, their former first-round pick, how to fight.
Teaching him how to fight.
Yes, teach them how to fight. So, I mean, we have the narrative here of them wanting to be more physical. And I'll say what I said to you last night. I have never seen a team react more towards one incident in my life other than maybe two things. The St. Louis Blues beating up on the Flyers in the early 70s and Ed Snyder reacting by assembling the Broad Street Bullies and the Sabres bringing in John Scott after the Ryan Miller, Milan Lucic incident. Other than that, the Rangers have completely overreacted to the Tom Wilson Panarin situation.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to two things. Having done 2 Ranger books, the Dale Rolfe incident was a big one with the Flyers, right? So, and everybody said they didn't react. Now the Rangers have completely overreacted to the point where, Ryan Reeves is teaching guys how to fight, and they're tweeting about it. And their bottom line has Sammy Blais and Ryan Reeves on it. If you want to win hockey games, how many minutes do you think that line is going to play a night? And who are you replacing or taking away ice time from because you have these 2 guys in the lineup? If you feel like they're going to really help you win a championship, I think you need to go back and readjust and relook at what Ryan Reeves does for you. It's a little bit in the regular season. It's practically nothing in the playoffs. And Sammy Blais does a little bit for you, but not enough. And to have a line of these guys doesn't make sense in today's hockey. If you want to do it for 4 games a year when you play Tom Wilson, fine. But you've allocated way too much money for a very small problem.
And Kevin, I know that teams in the era of Probert and Joey Kocur in Detroit loaded up on big guys like Sandy McCarthy or Brashear, but this is primarily a skilled team, the Rangers, and now they're bringing in size and physicality to counteract a team that they're going to play 4 times.
Well, that's true. Although I think Reeves, I don't think we're giving him enough credit for his ability to play. It'd be interesting. I was trying to call it up quickly, but I'm not fast enough. I wanted to see what he averaged, but my impression for having watched him, enough during my career is that he can play a regular shift. Like, he can do other things.
He had 5 points last year.
No, I'm talking about playing time. Did he play?
Playing time.
He
9
played
minutes and 56 seconds.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought he was playing 10 minutes a game. That's a little bit different than, the normal fourth liner plays 11 minutes, 11, 20. So he's down about a minute. So it's a completely different situation than the enforcer days of the 70s and 80s and into the 90s when the tough guys were playing 3 and 4 minutes. Right. So I do think there's that. What I find interesting is I saw and read an article that suggested that we might see tough guys make a comeback based on kind of the arms race mentality of, okay, if Washington's going to have Wilson and the Rangers are going to have Reeves, if we're here in the Metropolitan, do we need tough guys? And I kind of scoffed at the idea. Now, in training camp here in Traverse City with the Red Wings, they have a lot of younger players. Lucas Raymond, who's not very big. Berggren is not gigantic either. And these are very important rookies for the Red Wings. And in the rookie game at the NHL Prospects Tournament, 2 teams came in and tried to rough the Red Wings up. And there was a discussion, with the coach Blashill about whether the pre or off-season acquisition of Luke Witkowski was made with the idea that the Red Wings thought that might happen, that people might come after their younger players, and he said yes. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a thought out there that we may be dialing up the intensity here, and we have to find a way.
I agree that there's that thought. The Rangers have bunch of guys now that can do it, not just one. If they just brought in one,
right?
Like if it was just Sammy Blais, I'd say okay, because Sammy Blais could also get you 7 goals.
Right.
I get it, but they overloaded. But also, Kev, now we see Dylan McElrath in these preseason games, and he's elbowing guys in the head. He can't play hockey.
Well, no,
we're talking about. Are we just trying to sell preseason tickets with dirty play? It does seem that way right now.
Well, I think these players see getting physical as a way to make a team as a 13th forward or as a 7th defenseman. I mean, McElrath, we know he's not capable of playing in the league. I mean, Curtis Gabriel, who gained more attention in social media than he did in playing in the NHL last year. He's now with the Leafs. He signed a 1-year contract. He took a run at a Montreal player and got into a fight. I think he probably thinks that the only way he's going to make the NHL is to be that designated guy.
All these preseason games seem like 1970s hockey now.
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't go that far.
No.
Did you see the McElrath hit? You need to look at the hit.
What hit?
The McElrath one.
It was a side swap.
Yeah, I actually wrote on it today.
Yeah, I mean that's. In this era, that's a 70s kind of.
That's one hit. We used to have 3 and 4 a game like that in the 1970s. But the point I was going to make is, I don't think we're going to end up like that. Even though, I think the Red Wings are concerned about their younger players, and there is some talk about in the Metropolitan. I think this is going to blow over. I think it was important to the Rangers, or at least it was important to their ownership. Yeah. That they toughen up. And I think it wasn't so much that they didn't have a tough guy, it was that nobody responded, like when Panarin got thrown around. And what we're seeing here is the uniqueness of Tom Wilson. There aren't many players like him.
Yeah, he can play. He's an idiot, but he can play.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And now you have a reaction to that from the Rangers, and they went out and tried to get a guy. You can't find another Wilson because they don't exist, but you can find a guy that perhaps can play a little bit and can deal with Wilson, and that would be Reeves.
Now with the Red Wings, and I've seen him play in the American Hockey League with Grand Rapids a couple times. They signed Giovanni Smith to an extension, and I thought he's somebody who had the skill level to play in the NHL, and he's got the size. He's a scary dude out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Giovanni Smith, they want him to make the team.
Okay.
He will make the team because he's out of options. And they're confident that he would not get through waivers because Giovanni Smith, in addition to being very, very tough, actually has pretty good hands. So
and he can skate too. He can skate.
Yeah, he can skate. Yeah, so he could be a guy that can take a regular shift. If you read between the lines, Jeff Blashill went down on a day-by-day basis, and he basically said Giovanni Smith was okay this day. He was, pretty good this day. And if you read between the lines, he was saying, he's got to get a lot more consistent, in order to play regularly. So, but I don't see it, dialing back the clock. Although I do think everybody has that first Ranger Capitals meeting circled on their calendar.
They do, but Kev, all right, so I'll say it like this. So now this has definitely affected teams drafting, as we saw with Tyler Boucher and others. This has definitely affected teams signings, as we've seen, like the Rangers signing Jared Tenorti, and someone like Sammy Vatanen can't get a job anymore because he is smaller.
And he's lost a step.
Well, that's why he can't get a job, is because he lost.
Well, but again, if a team now is going to choose between a bigger guy who never had a step or a smaller guy who lost a step, they're going to take the bigger guy now,
right,
for the same money.
Yeah, but I mean,
as a depth guy, that's what they're going to do.
I mean, Ryan Ellis was part of a major trade. There are lots of.
He's still a premium guy. That's not.
Yeah, but I'm just
I'm talking
saying
about those last additions, those $750 to $1 million guys.
Yeah, but they weren't. They were. I think if you can play, you still got him. I mean, Troy Stetcher's still on the Red Wings, and he's a small guy.
Every team's got a couple, but teams are afraid to have too many smaller guys.
Well, they've always been afraid. Even 3 years ago, when they were, you don't want to get too many of them. You hear teams saying all the time, "Well, we already got." I mean, the Predators said that. You and I had this conversation. The Predators said, they had too many smaller defensemen. That's why.
Which I think is ridiculous. That their thinking is they have to be 6 foot or above, or we shouldn't have them on the team.
Well, Russ, I mean,
no, but that wasn't their position.
You're saying smaller, but I mean that's what essentially.
No. What they were saying is they had too many of them. Not that they shouldn't have any, but they felt like they had too many.
So if they're good, there's too many of them. Like, how do you determine?
But don't you think any kind of defense has to have some size?
Yeah, sure, but I mean, what's too many? How many did they have at the time?
Well, they were split down the middle. They were 3 and 3.
So 3 was too many. To me, if you have a smaller guy, bigger guy, smaller guy, bigger guy, smaller, I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but
I know, but that's what I'm saying.
I think teams are, they feel that way. They feel like, you can have a couple of guys.
When I started out in this business, guys were getting drafted simply because of size.
Yeah.
And that happened all through the 2000s.
But this argument is the reason why Erica Branson got $2 million from Calgary.
Correct.
He's big. He's tough. He's not particularly fast. He's right-handed.
So in a way, we have slipped back to that for sure.
Yeah. Darian?
No. We haven't slipped
back. Making a comeback, Russ?
You don't see those guys that can't play at all. Getting drafted like I mean, we still. I think they are taking bigger guys again. I mean, we saw some guys, but it's not like there was one year, I can remember where they were just after about the 20th pick, there were 10 guys in a row. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there were a lot of guys that were taken simply because they were big guys, and I don't see that. I think they're still looking. You're looking for bigger guys that can, skate and do that kind of thing. But
as usual, the NHL is sort of slow in reacting to certain things. And over the weekend, they issued a release regarding a tighter standard of enforcement on the rules for cross-checking. It took them this long after, the cross-check on Kucherov in the playoffs to finally respond to that. And I don't know if that means that I don't know if you saw it, Russ. There was a cross check on Pierre-Luc Dubois in a game against Ottawa, a preseason game. Grieg, I think it's Ridley Grieg for for Ottawa's. He got a 5 in a game, and he may get suspended. So I don't know how much the crackdown is going to really affect anything. Cross-checking, especially in front of the net, is part and parcel with paying the price. If you're going to go to the front of the net, the defenseman is going to cross-check you on your back until you move.
Well, I'm going to say one thing about the Ridley Grieg thing. What's interesting about that is he will get suspended before he gets to play his first NHL game then.
Right.
Like, he hasn't even played an NHL game. But I'm also going to tell you, I think clubs like when guys do that, and they don't care that they're going to get a suspension.
Right.
And so I think what the league is doing is fine, but teams are not going to care.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I think teams want to make it tough on players to go to the front of the net, to go to the dirty areas. And, if they have to pay a price, meaning they get suspended or they get penalized, they get fined, so much the better. Okay, couple things. I was sent a screener of the All or Nothing Leaf series this weekend. It's going to debut on Amazon Prime in Canada on Friday. And see, Russ, this is the thing. I've watched most of the 24/7s.
Yeah.
Hearing F-bombs from players and coaches and general managers really doesn't faze me anymore. It's like I grew up in an Italian family. It's like, so hearing the F word it doesn't really register with me anymore. The only thing I can say is that the coaching staff, and the only thing I really learned that I didn't know already, and I'm a reporter, I'm not a fan. I have more access than most people have. So the stuff that I know are not things that the fans know. So they may learn something and may be beneficial for them to watch it.
Right.
But the only thing I learned was that the coaching staff of the Leafs, even before Game 7, knew that, these players were dealing with pressure and with demons, and that they, were basically getting in their own way, and that showed in how they crumbled in Game 7. So other than that, it's like, great, the behind the scenes stuff on the injuries to Foligno and Bogosian and especially Tavares. I mean, it was really good to have that sort of inside view. But other than that, it really didn't really do much for me in terms of like informing me, or, it's nice to have the inside look, and, you get the Randy Carlyle toaster moments.
Yeah.
It really wasn't.
I'll enjoy it. I think an inside look at teams is good. I think what I could do without is like William Nylander's agent saying we don't like the way he was portrayed. It's like, listen, again, if people, I would hope that his agent would understand that by having this series, it helps the game. It shows the players. Whether the players are showing themselves in a good light or not, that's on the player.
What?
You shouldn't be able to edit that out.
Are you telling me that every player doesn't arrange for half a dozen race cars to be raced by his teammates at a track in Toronto right before the playoffs? Oh, come on.
But again, so here's my thing about that. The agent, listen, after the fact, trying to basically, and maybe that was what annoyed him, saying that should have been edited out, makes it look worse. Listen, it's on the player. If this is what the player did, he knew what was going on. He knew the kind of access that was going on, and he had no problem doing it. So you know what? You got to just deal with it after, right, Kev? I mean, that's it.
Well, first of all, I don't even know what you're talking about.
I watched like 95% of the series. I fast forwarded some of the game stuff. The only thing I saw that I thought could be criticized on the part of Nylander, like I said, is right before the playoffs, he apparently arranged for himself and a bunch of teammates to go to a racetrack around Toronto. Apparently, he had a bunch of sports cars and like 5 or 6 players went around the track, were going probably 100 miles an hour or more. Other than that, it was on the ice stuff, and he he was dressed in his finest fashions. He's sort of like, him and Matthews are sort of fashionistas, and he's got the colored sunglasses and this and that. But there's nothing there from William Nylander that I hadn't known before. I mean, he's the son of an NHL player who made a lot of money. I think he's sort of entitled. He's a very good hockey player. The problem that Leaf fans have is that the fact that he shows up maybe 12, 15 games a year, and the other 70, he's just an okay player, where he's got a lot of talent.
Yeah, no, it sounds interesting. With regard to what Russ said, I agree with Russ. For the agent to come in and try to get that out makes it seem more ridiculous.
Well, I mean, just one factor here, and I know this because of the negotiations when he was holding out. Part of the agency that represents him is his dad. Michael Nylander is part of that agency. So I'm sure that, maybe his dad didn't like the way he was being represented, and that got funneled through the agency.
I guess that brings up the idea, and I wondered, isn't it the modern approach to has it been erased that we think that you can't do other things and concentrate on trying to win a championship at the same time? Should you not be able to play golf during the playoffs?
I personally don't have a problem with it. I just have a problem with the agent trying to block us seeing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, remember how much criticism I know the Leafs got some criticism about taking a boat trip in Florida in between games between Tampa and Florida. The New York Giants got criticism for going on a boat trip before their playoff game. I mean, you know what? That criticism only comes out after you lose. If you win, that's something that they say, oh, that was ice breaking. That took the pressure off. That was a good thing. And if they lose, right, there you go. They weren't paying their dues. They weren't concentrating. They were too busy, trying to catch fish in the Gulf of Mexico instead of trying to win a game.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's the way it goes. But you would think in the kind of the modern world we live in that people understand that you can compartmentalize things. It doesn't mean you don't want to win just because you want to get in a race car the playoffs. So,
but I would I'll say this on the part. I can on the for the Leaf fans out there who are curious about watching this, I'd pass, because if all you want is a reminder of a painful loss, the inside stuff is cool, great. They're coffee snobs. They like Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall are chipping golf balls and whatever. I mean, it's fine, but honestly, I don't. The end result. You know how painful it was. Why put yourself through it? But anyway, one other thing here. I just saw this note just before. Mike Harrington of the Buffalo News just retweeted this, and I hope it's an indicator of where the NHL and Major League Baseball go. Andrew Marchand, I think of the New York Post, said that Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, is making it clear to the teams in the league that he wants broadcasters on the road and not working remotely. And that, hopefully the other leagues, and I know the NHL always takes a cue from the NBA, will do otherwise. I have to bring this up because I was telling Russ about this. During the weekend, I was doing some things and listening to the Yankees Red Sox game. You listen to the radio broadcast, and we know, John Sterling is in his 80s and his sight isn't the greatest, but he's doing the game remotely. Normally he would be at Fenway and he could see the home runs or see, he was completely dependent on two screens in the broadcast booth at Yankee Stadium to broadcast the game. And Kevin, give me $1 for every time he got something wrong in terms of, strike three. Wait a second. They called that a ball? Like that. It was like that. It was stuff that normally 99 times out of 100 he would get right, but he was completely dependent on the TV broadcast. And I know that there are younger broadcasters out there, but in listening to radio broadcasts of hockey games last year, you could tell the difference between somebody who was doing it remotely and somebody who was doing it in the arena.
Yeah, I agree. And with basketball too, we're just so used to the broadcasters are courtside there, and you could feel that. So that's, I think, why Silver wants to make sure he does that. Where the hockey, they're not exactly on the ice, but still, you want them there because they get a sense for the crowd and the momentum and all that you just can't get if you're watching it off monitor. So it's better for sure for broadcasters. Although, Mike Emmerich did an incredible job his last.
Oh yeah.
But
you're talking about the best in the business. That's
yeah. I mean, it's you still can't argue that it's better remotely. It's better when you're there. So.
Yeah.
And the one thing I picked up on when Emmerich was doing it remotely was the fact that he was patient enough to, like, when the goal was scored, he waited like a second.
Yeah.
And
right.
He scored. He didn't assume, because then by assuming you open yourself up to more mistakes. Sterling, the only time he hit something right in the 3-game series at Fenway was when the camera panned up to the stratosphere when Stanton hit the home runs, because he knew the ball was out of the park. But the one time the camera panned up for a long fly ball and he goes, "It is high, it is far, it is caught." And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, although that's a kind of a normal baseball call. It's long, it's deep.
That is normal.
Yeah. You hear that quite a bit. It's actually something I appreciate, that, because it looks pretty good off the bat, and then, just kind of the negative result you can hear the disappointment. Yeah.
It's tantalizing and it's annoying when you it's a home run and it's caught. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the RFAs that are just hanging out there?
Yeah, no. That was the next thing I was going to bring up, Russ. Is
okay, cool.
It must be nice to be in Michigan, Kev, because all the
they're all here. Yeah,
all there.
Yeah, we just ran a picture in Detroit Hockey Now of the Quinn and Pedersen at the Michigan game. So.
Yeah, and Brady Tkachuk is there as well, and it doesn't seem, even though we heard Jim Benning come out, I think on Friday, and say, "Oh, we're really close. It's really close." Well, okay, you're a week into training camp. Usually, it's solved within a day or two. You're a week into training camp, and Tkachuk is not signed with Ottawa, and the 2 Vancouver players are not signed either. And I don't know. We're waiting.
Well. And here I sit in a state where Steve Yzerman, who's not opposed to offer sheets, as I've been told, sitting there with $15 million in cap space. And
he could really blow up a team, couldn't he?
He could. He really could if he wanted to do that. And they could use the center. I mean, Pius Suter can play wing or center.
And he's the right nationality. If the Swedes in Detroit, that's always
he'd be the guy they go after for sure.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, yeah. That's although they would love Tkachuk too, then they'd have a second guy with a little edge to him.
But Ottawa's got the cap space.
The only thing is, you're going to give up the same amount of picks for Tkachuk or for Pedersen, and you might as well go for Pedersen at that point.
Well. Yeah, although the question is, if you just went $10 million for him, you wouldn't be at the 4 first-round picks. And it would still put a tremendous hurt on, because they would have to move some bodies then to afford Quinn.
Right.
If they matched. So, I think they would match, but, that's the problem, though. For them to go after him and make it such a difficulty for them to match, I think it would be, they'd have to give up the 4 first-round picks. They're just not going to do that. No, there's just no way. Not in a rebuild. So
especially in the place that they're in right now. I mean, even if they add Pedersen, are they a playoff team in that division?
No.
Probably not. So you're probably giving up picks in the teens at least. And, if they have a bad year or if Pedersen gets hurt, then you could be talking about top 10 or top 5 picks. So,
yeah, I mean, the story that I had heard is that he, being Yzerman, had a meeting with his cabinet, and someone had suggested, this was back when Marner was available, should they tender an offer sheet to Marner? And his question back to them was, well, will it make us a Stanley Cup contending team? And everybody said, well, no. He says, well, then why would we do it?
Right.
So I think he would say the same thing here. They're not close enough that one player is not going to turn them into a contender. So,
but what does it look like to, let's say, the Senators market? They've struggled for attendance. They said they were going to spend more money. They said they were close to signing Tkachuk. And so far, none of these things have happened. And so you do kind of wonder, and I just got an email saying that of all the teams in the league, and this is from a place called, they do all kinds of studies, Senti Strength. They basically said that the Senators fans are the most fair weather fans in the league. And I don't think that's based on all these analytics. I think it's based on what ownership has turned it into for these fans to kind of root for this team, Kev. I mean, what are you supposed to believe in?
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you and I agree that we think the Senators are going to be good in the long run. They got some nice starts. So
they'll be better. But right now, as happened in Detroit on Sunday, where they had a retirement ceremony for Calvin Johnson and the owner gets booed at halftime.
Yeah.
If Eugene Melnyk went out to center ice and obviously there's not going to be a full building in Ottawa because they don't fill the building unless Leaf fans are there or Habs fans. Eugene Melnyk would get lustily booed. And deservedly so, because he hasn't invested in paying, Tkachuk is a perfect example. I mean, pay the guy. He's your future captain. He's your linchpin. He's your cornerstone, and they're not doing that.
Yeah. No, yeah. And the Lions situation is, to me, kind of sad that, the fan base, certainly they have every right to boo because of what's going on here. But, you could make an impact if you were a fan by not, and I am a season ticket holder, so I could do the same thing. You could put in your vote by not going to games.
Right.
And they never do that. Instead, they just go out and embarrass a woman who is part of the family, but has only been involved for a short period of time.
Right. That doesn't do anything for anybody.
Yeah, it didn't do anything, and I'm sure it embarrassed her. And it was just kind of ridiculous. Yeah, you couldn't hear from what I've read on social media, what Calvin Johnson had to say because people were booing. And when you do those kind of things, it's just, and then, guys high five each other and you think you're doing something and you're really doing nothing. So,
by the way, another note about Ottawa. I know you probably talked about it the other day, but since I wasn't on, I really think that was a mistake for them to make that Logan Brown, Zach Zanford trade. I do, because I know that they do need some veterans on Ottawa to play with the young players, but I don't want to give up a guy who does have size and some scoring ability to do it. I think that was the wrong guy to sort of deal. But again, they haven't utilized him. And I've heard from a few people that they feel like his skating is good enough now and that he can start to, become an NHLer. And it's like, he's only 23.
Yeah. And in return, Ottawa gets a player who's a UFA at the end of the year. So he's an expiring contract. So, I mean,
they were just basically gave him away. I didn't understand that either. No, it is curious, Russ. I'd like to get your take on this since you're both a baseball and the hockey guy. It's so funny to me that totally acceptable, expected for young players to arrive in the major leagues in baseball at 25. But 23 now, people are starting to look like that's, okay, you didn't make it.
Right.
So
yeah, it's weird. I mean, again, I could just go back to Pete Alonso, who arrived at 26.
Yeah.
DeGrom 27.
Aaron Judge was 26 or 27.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I'll tell you.
baseball
I saw
does it all
Aaron
the time.
Judge play in Double-A, Kev. Right. Years ago, I did
Yeah.
a book signing with the Binghamton Mets, and they happened to be playing the Staten Island Yankees. And here's this massive guy in the field, Aaron Judge, and I'm like, all right, I'll be interested to watch him. He couldn't hit anything. He was the worst hitter I've seen to date at that level. And then a year and a half later, he was hitting everything.
Yeah,
it does just click.
He had a strike zone that you could drive a Mack truck through, and
He had no pitch identification. He couldn't do it.
And now
with pitchers, though, I can see that because the art of pitching, and you see, like I remember Frank Tanana went from a fireballer to a guy that would nibble at the corners. He was like Maddox and Quail Yard and everything else. And so you can, as a pitcher, kind of find your game late.
Yeah, I mean,
not someone his hitter. So
I mean, he had to because he blew out his arm. But yeah, he was able to adapt later in his career, and he was.
Yeah, that's why I get that the Sens have a lot of prospects. I do, and I had asked people about Logan Brown for the last year or two. So maybe it's something with the coach. Maybe the coach just doesn't think he's going to be good.
Yeah, or maybe sometimes guys don't have it, whatever it is.
Sometimes that's true.
Yeah, you just have to wait and see. I've said this before. Just recently, I was just talking about it. I'm always amused that everybody always thinks that once we get him into our system, he'll be better. We know what we're doing. So.
I'm gonna save the top 75 list to Wednesday because I want to devote some time to it. But the one thing I did see that was interesting, we'll end on this. There is talk now, obviously, with the league getting back to an 82 game schedule and crossing the borders and everything else. Everything is in terms of transactions apparently is going to get back to normal. Although there is talk. There isn't going to be a taxi squad this year, but there is talk about a taxi squad for goalies for an extra goaltender. Pierre Dorian apparently let that slip to some of the Ottawa media in the last couple days. And if you think about it, Kev, the story and Anton Forsberg, he was on 4 teams last year because whenever a goalie got put on waivers, the other team was in danger because they needed a goalie. So they claimed him, and he went from like Carolina to Chicago to this place to Ottawa in I think like a month. The guy had stamps on his suitcase. So with that reality, they may have to have a taxi squad for goalies.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. So
when are they going to decide on that?
I don't know.
Before the regular season.
I'll tell you who's got to be anxious about it if it's already known is the American League because that changes everything for them. So
it changes everything for them, but also even for the players, even for the teams. Again, like last year, it was tough because you built your roster a certain way, and then all of a sudden you have this taxi squad, and it does change the dynamic. This year, they figured there was no taxi squad, so there were teams that did get rid of some other depth in their goaltending system because they figured they can't use them. Now, if it's all of a sudden becoming a thing where you need one again, that is going to change the dynamic for certain teams because, I'll give you one like the Flyers. They don't have necessarily a third one that they can call up anymore. If they knew there was going to be a taxi squad, would they have signed Alex Lyon? Yeah, they probably would have.
All right, good show, guys. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.